Hello, everybody, and welcome to the session titled Enabling Decarbonization and Social Impact Through Strategic Partnerships. My name is Krembs. I'm the head of sustainability for Enel North America in the USA and Canada. And like all of you, I'm really happy to be participating in a week of engagement, enthusiasm, hopefully mostly optimism, where we can all agree on this year's theme of advancing climate solutions. Similarly, Enel's purpose is to empower sustainable progress. And so I'd imagine that each of you in organizations that are filled with purpose-driven employees and other motivations can align and identify with those statements. For those that are not familiar here in the room with Enel, we're a clean energy leader working to electrify the economy and build a net zero carbon future, decarbonizing the supply chain and transportation, focusing on grids and promoting an equitable and just transition, which we're going to highlight even more throughout today's panel. We serve about 5,000 businesses across the USA and Canada, including cities across the energy value chain, renewable power generation, demand response, distributed energy, e-mobility solutions, services, and a host of others. The session today, as I said, is to really focus on the power of partnerships. This has been one of the main themes that I have identified with and what I've heard in the sessions that I've attended the last couple of days. But not just the role of partnerships driving decarbonization, but the role of how those partnerships also drive equity and social impact across an organization's value chain. In other words, some may call this a just and equitable energy transition. Others call it shared values. However we would like to characterize these commitments, I'll be joined today momentarily by a few all-star panelists that will be addressing and sharing their stories on how they've driven and enabled partnerships to reach their decarbonization objectives. And it wouldn't be a panel at Climate Week if we didn't also address Scope 3 emissions, so we'll also talk about how those commitments have extended into those organizations' supply and value chains. I'd like each of us to really think about today in an optimistic tone that in the not so distant future in the clean energy sector, we're looking at a tripling of renewable energy capacity to north of 11,000 gigawatts by 2030. So let that sink in for a minute. That's an absolutely astronomical infrastructure deployment and capital deployment resulting in tens of billions of dollars. And then we're going to double it again by 2040. So that's what the future looks like, and that's why we're all here. We are today witness to this great industrial transformation, mobilizing capital, which has been the focus of many sessions across these days. And to us at Enel, most importantly, it's about people. And those people that we just heard the prior panelists talk about, it's that brawn, it's that the boiler room to the boardroom, I think the comment was, but it's the individuals that are going to make it happen. And everybody here in this room, I know, who are sharing that same vision. So what can each of you expect to learn and take from today's conversation? It's my belief that we are all here as part of a broader ecosystem and a collective with a set of common goals to tackle the climate crisis, to deliver creative solutions, and to form innovative partnerships needed to accelerate and scale. So during this panel, we're going to talk about how this is achievable, and our speakers are going to showcase their strategies and how they are creating a dialogue within their broader ecosystem of partners. So the role of business is clear, and let's get started and share their stories. If the panelists could please join me on stage. So I'd first like to welcome Simone Gourguechon, who is the Director of Sustainability, Restaurants, and Customer Experience for McDonald's. Simone was recognized last year by the WWF as a rising star in sustainability and is responsible for ESG and reporting on McDonald's purpose and impact. She also is responsible for navigating cross-functional work, like many of us here in this room, and aligning and understanding and navigating external standards and reporting frameworks. No small task. Also joining me is Danny Fahey, the Vice President of U.S. Strategy and Sustainability for Martin Brower. Danny will share a little bit more about Martin Brower, but from what I've come to learn about Martin Brower over the last several months is that it's a fascinating logistics and supply chain company that I'm excited for all of you to get to know more of today. And they are literally driving towards a low carbon future. And Danny can talk a little bit more about his role in those objectives. Danny leads the company's commitments to reduce emissions by 50% by 2030, delivers zero waste, and coordinates the company's net zero roadmap. So welcome, Danny. Last but not least is Morten Dyrholm, Group Senior Vice President of Marketing, Communications, Sustainability, and Public Affairs for Vestas. In addition to having broad responsibilities for Vestas, Morten also serves as the current chairman of the Global Wind Energy Council. As a leading manufacturer and service provider of onshore and offshore wind turbines across the globe, I'll allow Forbes to describe Vestas as an exemplar in the transformation of major economic systems. That is a shout out, if I've ever heard one. Vestas was always also the recipient in 2022 by Corporate Knights of the world's most sustainable company. So we truly have a world-class panel joining today, and I'd like to jump straight into our first question. The first aspect of our panel will be focused on partnerships and the role of partnerships and ecosystems and how we're driving that towards our collective decarbonization goals. Let's not forget that SDG 17, arguably the most important SDG around partnerships for the goals. That is something that we carry very closely within Enel and would like each of us to dig into a little bit further. We are fortunate to have a partnership with McDonald's and Martin Brower through an extended voluntary power purchase agreement, a virtual power purchase agreement, or VPPA, for which we'll talk a little bit more about today, but it's a very unique, novel deal structure that McDonald's was able to convene with their North American Logistics Council and 6 largest supply chain partners. Within that long-term partnership, McDonald's took a step further to embed enhanced environmental sustainability and a commitment to drive towards community benefit partnerships and agreements in the areas where we are all present. So we're really excited to get to work on this long-term partnership. And Simone, if I could please start with you. Please describe McDonald's approach to energy, but don't feel limited to just talk about energy, although we're in a clean energy track. Feel free to talk about other aspects and categories where McDonald's is focusing on partnerships and decarbonization.
Okay, great. Thank you, Marcus.
Yep.
And thank you for hosting the panel and for bringing us all together. So I am so pleased to be here. My background is in building partnerships. I don't come from the energy space necessarily, and so I really love coming to New York this week to see all of the collaboration and bringing it together across so many different spaces. I think this week in particular, what I've heard that is really inspiring is that we are getting down to practical ways that we can make this happen. We know we have to work together, so now how are we really going to do it? And I think that this project that we are working on, our VPPA, is a really good example of that. How do we get practical? How do we make it happen? So just briefly about McDonald's, you've probably all heard of the company, but you might not understand too much about the big structure behind the brand. We are in 100 plus markets or countries around the world. We have 38,000 restaurants around the world, but we also, of those restaurants, 90% or more are franchised. So we don't really run the restaurants necessarily. We don't grow food. We don't produce food. We serve it. And so when we think about our climate emissions and think about our impact and our sustainability, we're coming from that lens. So what that means for partnership is that it's really, really critical. At McDonald's, we talk about the 3-legged stool, which is corporate, franchisees, and supply chain, like Martin Brower, and our friend Danny and Amy out in the audience there too. And so, when we are looking at what we can do about our emissions, we start by thinking about, how do we work back into our scope 3? How do we enable our suppliers to work on this? And a big part of that is to set expectations, right? That is our role, is we need to reduce, we want you to as well, and we're an end market for you, right? So we're sending that signal. We also can share knowledge and information, and when appropriate, we can directly partner to purchase together. And so I think the project that we're referring to is called Blue Jay. It's in Texas, and it was a really great opportunity to come together. We look for deals in our renewable energy work, which is a huge lever for us, as I think it is for most people or most entities. We look for deals that are about 500 megawatt hours annually, which is pretty large. And so the Blue Jay project, I think, came in at around 470.
And that would be gigawatt hours. Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
And thank you.
Yep.
And so that was a really great project for us, kind of reaching the scale that we wanted and being able to work with Martin Brower and Enel to bring this together and have enable some of the aggregation to happen. Like Marcus added, we had some expectations as well. We wanted to bring in these co-benefits and really think about it holistically across all of our sustainability work. So you could think of this as partnerships as well, right? Partnership with nature. Let's put in pollinator-friendly vegetation in the project as well. And let's think about what are some of the other community benefits. There's things like tax revenue for the communities where the project actually is, but then we're also continuing to think about how can we put things down in the ground and integrate it in with other community efforts. And that's really important to McDonald's as our brand purpose is to feed and foster communities around the world.
Thank you, Simone. And thanks for adding color to the motivations that McDonald's has, the breadth of its operations, and the commitment it has to its partners, partially represented today by Martin Brower and yourself, Danny. Tell the audience a little bit about Martin Brower, if you could, and what your experience was when you were first approached with the opportunity to join in this partnership with McDonald's on your first large-scale renewable energy purchase.
Yeah, thanks, Marcus. Thanks, Simone. Pleasure to be here and happy to share the story and the efforts that we've been through on this. So for those of you that aren't familiar, Martin Brower, we are a global supply chain solutions company. So we operate and service customers in 18 countries, and we drive the entire supply chain solution, whether that's planning and analytics. It could be the procurement, actually. It could be of course, distribution and logistics piece of it. And throughout, using that to drive positive impact in the communities and protecting the brands that we partner with, right? So, Simone mentioned the three-legged stool, which is core to how McDonald's and the supply chains operate and partner together. And we're a huge piece of that, we like to think. We deliver and provide services for most of the volume globally for McDonald's. And the opportunity arose to partner on renewable energy and this VPPA in Texas. I also chair the North American Logistics Council sustainability team for McDonald's. So we partner with other distributors that service regions in the US. And through this effort, we were able to leverage the scale of ourselves and McDonald's to offload the entire electrical demand for the distribution network in the US. So it's a huge step and directly contributes to the science-based targets and these carbon goals that all of us have in the supply chain, again, supporting our customers. Because of that, it also opens the door to your point, Marcus, about other opportunities. So now we can start to talk about battery electric vehicles in logistics, and it'll actually have renewable energy driving it. You can also talk about other renewable fuels and technologies that are available and out there that we are driving and leveraging, right? So it's an exciting time, and this project in particular was a huge, huge win for the entire supply chain and Martin Brower for sure. So.
Great, thanks, Danny. And Morten, when you think across the spectrum of Vestas's global, let's say, handprint, because there is a really nice carbon payback from the products that you manufacture. Talk to us a little about the partnerships that matter most within Vestas.
Well, the partnership with you is one of our most important. Thank you to Enel. You are clearly one of the drivers to the green transition and one of the front runners in this game. And also pushing us as your provider to make sure that our products are as sustainable as they can get. A wind turbine, I mean, you know, after 3 to 4 months of operation, a wind turbine has more or less, you know, spent the CO2 or earned the CO2 that has gone into the production of it, and it lasts for 30, 35 years. So there is a, you know, high degree of carbon removal in a wind turbine. So just to put that straight, that does not give us an excuse to not look at the carbon that has actually gone into the production of the turbine. And we are laser sharp and focused on making sure we drive out as much carbon of these turbines as we can in the production of it. And we need partners to do that, because if you take a wind turbine, we have one here in the back. You see there's large towers here, there's a lot of steel in there. And it's the single biggest piece of carbon emission that goes into the production. That's the steel component here. We have to source that steel, you know, from steel providers that can produce it in a green way, using these green fuels that you were talking about. We can actually today, with known technology, create green steel that are more or less carbon-free. It's a cost issue right now, but as volume goes up, we will start seeing green steel being put into these turbines. We have already several attempts now with steel manufacturers to go in this direction. Of course, it's an added benefit for us because they need to use, you know, wind turbines to produce the green electrons, turn that into green fuels, and then produce the green steel. So for us, it's of course also a business opportunity with our suppliers. But it is the way to go, and that's a partnership, you know, example for us in the wind industry to get as much carbon as we can out of the steel production. So, I mean, there are other ways in our transport sector, and you mentioned it as well. You know, we have a strategic partnership with a Danish shipping company called Maersk. They just last week had the first ship commenced that runs on methanol, a huge transport vessel, and they have ordered 13 or 15 more of these enormous tankers or cargo ships that we can utilize in the transport of wind turbines to run on green fuels. And so again, another partnership that is essential for Vestas to sort of look at every piece of our value chain and see where can we drive out, you know, the carbon emissions. And that's what we're focused on. And again, thanks to Enel for inviting us here. It's fantastic.
Okay. Well, thank you, Morten, and for illustrating a bit about the profile of what goes into making a wind turbine. And I believe the statistic is about 95% of a turbine today is fully recyclable, but there are portions that are hard to recycle. And we'll talk a little bit more about a different partnership that Enel Green Power has with Vestas on our first utility-scale wind decommissioning project. But I'd like to really shift the conversation a little bit now into the social impact domain. I set up talking a little bit about the equitable and just and fair transition. That's a really loaded term that means different things to almost every different organization who you may ask. It'll have common threads through it, but it really is contextualized into the region or into the aspect that really translates into equity and fairness for all people. Shared values as well. You know, there are so many areas where we have in common here in this room and across this week at Climate Week and beyond, and hopefully that we can remember that when we go back to our daily grind. But Morten, I'm going to start with you on this question as well around how we are looking at decarbonization through the lens of societal engagement, social impact, community, and people. I did mention our partnership at Snyder Wind in Texas that had a very novel and innovative approach to end-of-life management and full circularity. But to talk to me a little bit more about Vestas' approach to society as a broader term. I know that's a big question, but...
No, but let's take the outset of this. I mean, you know, the program we did together with Enel was really to, and as you say, we have some issues in the wind turbines that has been hard to recycle, and the blades in particular has been, because of the epoxy that goes into a blade, has been really difficult. But we found a novel solution with the Snyder Wind project with Enel, and basically brought the blades into a recyclable solution that, you know, was a shared value for both our companies to do it. And we've now gone on and moved on from that, and are also inspired by that. We've actually created a fully fledged solution to recycling the blades. We found a way to basically, with a chemical solution, basically separating all the components of the blade into its original pieces, and we can reuse that now to build new blades. And we can actually, for those blades that have been taken down already, we can actually take those old blades and recycle them as well. So that last piece that were nagging us, and that's, for me, that's a societal value that we have in the company, and something we have to make sure that we can do, because we're going to be putting up a lot of these turbines, especially here in the US, with the Inflation Reduction Act that was also mentioned at the last panel. And we have to make sure that when they reach end of life, that we can fully recycle everything that goes into the turbine. And we can do that today. So that's one example of how we think societal in the way we operate.
Okay, thanks, Morten. And you talked about the adoption of new technologies, the innovation that's required to test, to fail, to pursue alternate solutions. In the logistics and transportation world, Danny, I'd imagine there's a lot of people that are required to service and maintain a fleet that I learned just earlier today was not just 700, but in the more than double that globally. So when you look at fleet electrification and you look at alternative fuels and other technologies and innovations across your logistics and supply chain operations, how does that translate into the role of an individual, of people, and your workforce?
Yeah, absolutely. Everyone obviously is excited about operating more efficiently, more carbon efficiently, and helping the climate and the environment. But it becomes real, right, for the folks on the front lines doing the actual work. And as we utilize renewable energy and new technologies that are coming around the corner, we're excited to be on the cutting edge of some of that. So when we talk about fleet electrification, both in the tractors or in the trailers, we have 1,300 plus vehicles in the US, for example, that we operate today that some will be transitioned to electricity, some will be going to renewable fuels, and all of those require new skills and new training, and it's basically future-proofs our workforce as we move forward in this transition, so that they have the talent and the skills needed for what the world looks like in 35 and 40 and beyond, right?
Great, thanks, Danny. And finally, Simone, you talked about McDonald's commitment to community and citizenship. How do you connect that commitment with your decarbonization goals and your investments, and how you show up through your franchisees or through your other your presence in communities across the U.S. and abroad?
Yeah. I think it's a journey that we're still on, but we are very committed to figuring out and working together with our, social impact teams and our environmental impact teams, as well as anyone else who wants to help. So I think there's some basic things that we do when we think about our renewable energy work is, to start, we make sure that all of our developers, anyone that we're in a VPPA with, there's a supplier code of conduct, and that runs across all of our supply chain, and this is no different. And so while I don't know that that is like additional social impact necessarily, because it's really just table stakes, ethical business, it is a really important part to make sure that we are, and everyone we work with, respecting human rights and thinking about the people and the communities that we're working within. We have other programs and work that we do in providing opportunities for youth. We're committed to creating jobs for 2 million youth around the world by 2025, and so working with that team to think about jobs and how do we connect to the communities in that way. We work with our philanthropic team, of course, just to understand the social impact needs and is there any opportunity there. I think there's a lot more that we can do together and continue to figure out how do we apply this to the communities and really probably listen to the communities a bit more about what do they want, right? What do they need from us for us to be, to continue to invest in renewable energy, and how is it going to impact them?
Okay, thanks, Simone. So earlier today, the Climate Group sent out an email to those that are also registered for Climate Group updates, that had in its title collective action, something to that effect. And when we think about the theme and the power of collective action and collective impact and partnerships, we know that there's a lot of excellent work that's being done, that there are consortia, there are associations, conveners, galore, in fact. But we're still not there. There's still a long ways to go, and one of the comments in an earlier session I was a part of this week said, you know, is there a clearinghouse for this? You know, the sector-specific conveners on climate action in apparel or in chemicals or in manufacturing, transportation, logistics, energy, et cetera. And that was where one of the hosts of that event said, no, that doesn't exist today. So we're still revealing opportunities to build community and to build connections towards common goals. So I'd like to ask a impromptu question of the panelists, if I could, and that is around the theme of partnerships. If you were to look at your organization 1 year from today, what type of partnership doesn't exist today that you would like to see manifest over the next year or two as we're accelerating our progress towards the 2030 agenda and beyond? So said in other words, where would you like to see your company in a year from now? If I were to ask this question around something needed in the area of partnerships that you just don't have today, but that would help you accelerate your own progress.
I can start,
Morten,
if you want.
please.
A public-private partnership on some pre-qualification criteria that goes into, you know, some minimum standards in terms of when you bid for a project of wind turbines. There are some pre-qualification criteria that you have to meet as a standard that is around your sustainability. It could be, you know, cybersecurity. It could be other things where you raise the bar for the industry just to get access to actually bid for projects. That will level the playing field and raise the bar for the entire industry. And getting that public-private partnership in place to find out what those minimum standards should be, I would hope we will be in a year from now in that place.
Okay, thanks, Morten. Danny or Simone?
Yeah, I'll piggyback off of that. The public engagement and partnership, I think, is going to be a huge aspect for us in transportation. You know, we can control our own fleet, and we can control things that make sense for our business and are sustainable, not only environmentally, but business-wise, right? The challenge is when we talk about scope 3 and inbound suppliers and those other parties that we work with all the time, there's hesitation to invest in these new technologies that cost more if not everyone is doing it on a level playing field, right? So we have pockets where we can point to and say, look at the win here, look at the win there, but you can't bring the entire industry without that public direction and partnership on how to do that. So would love to see that develop as we go forward.
Okay.
I'm going to go with two if I can. One, energy, which is that I hope that we can build out more energy projects like the one we've talked about today, and so that we do that with, you know, with our suppliers, with more suppliers, and can continue to build out that model. I think it's working pretty well, and so, you know, continue to add that in. I think the other big one, and this is different from energy, but it's really, really important for McDonald's, is making sure that we're working with the farmers that we rely on, right? And so everyone, I think, knows that we need to center the conversation there, and it's more important to us than ever as we think about them as part of the community. Their livelihoods are our ability to do business, and so I hope that continues to grow as well.
Okay. And since I asked the unscripted question, I'll also answer it myself, which is if Enel were to fast forward a year and say, what are the types of partnerships that matter and are moving the needle? I would say in the area, we were talking a little bit earlier today about the concept of energy circularity, is the electricity that's needed to fuel the alternative fuels and the electrolyzers of the future. It's the battery storage systems, which we're seeing a monumental and rapid accelerated deployment of standalone and hybrid battery energy storage systems. But all of the materials that go into those products are going to increasingly become the subject and focus of expected critique from all of those stakeholders that we are that matter to our organizations. So I would say the partnerships around circularity and circular economy principles within the energy sector, there's been some academic and technical work in this space through some of our industry associations, but I think we have a long ways to go, and the multiplier effect that we have on localizing supply chains and closing loops in the energy sector can really have a multiplier effect on climate progress as well. So we hope that a convener will establish itself as bringing different actors together, not just in energy, but down to the mineral level, or using blockchain technology and AI to look at the traceability provisions for reuse cases. So there's a lot that can be done there. There's a lot being done in other sectors, and I think energy is ripe for those types of additional partnerships that intersect with climate.
I'm happy to start up that work together with you if you want.
Okay.
Now let's do it. I mean, let's not talk.
Let's do it.
Marcus, you're making me think of another partnership too, and it's really this cross-pollination idea of, we were talking earlier about circularity in restaurants. It's something that we're just starting to think about, and how do we steal from other concepts and these kind of silos that we work in around circularity or energy or climate, and make sure that we're sharing ideas there. So thinking about hearing what you're saying on green steel, would love to learn more about that and pull that into other places where we might use steel. So I think this continued collaboration, if not full-on partnerships, is really an interesting place for us to continue to go.
Okay. So I'd like to get closer to the final question that I have for all of you. And that's really getting at the root of each of your personal motivations. So really finding your why, what made you show up to Climate Week outside of attending today's great panel, but what really drives you? Where's that fire come from for each of you that drives your optimism, that pushes away skepticism when you can feel it creeping in, which I know has been involved in some of these sessions across these days. But really, I'll start by revealing a little bit about myself and my personal motivations around, certainly being a father of three, but really embedding leave no trace outdoor principles, is leaving something better than what you have found it effectively. It's planning ahead, but also making sure that when you leave an area that it's better than how you found it. And applying that in the business world can be very complex, very challenging, as our organizations each have unique impacts, or could certainly have positive or net positive ultimate ambitions for itself. So I would first start with Danny. Let's have a glimpse of what your why is, what motivates you to do the work that you do, that keeps you excited, passionate, and driving towards your goals within Martin Brower.
Yeah, thank you. From a personal standpoint, like yourself, I have little ones at home, and we like to travel. And a small story here. A few years ago, when COVID had blocked a lot of the borders and stuff, where are you taking the family? In the pandemic, we had a chance to go to some of the national parks out west, and in Alaska, for example, and see some of the monumental glaciers and nature out there. And it was exciting, the scale of what's there. But then it really hit home, even for the little ones, when they saw the pictures next to all these sites of what it used to look like 20 years ago or 30 years ago or whatever, and how much, even though this glacier is massive right now, how much it's actually shrunk and the direction it's going. So it became real, and they started to ask more questions about what we do at work, right? And what are the projects that we're driving to make this better? And so that really was important. And from a professional standpoint, I'll say, anytime we share some of the activities that are going on, like the Blue Jay project, or some of the other technologies that we are piloting and testing with, as we talk about electrification, hydrogen fuel cells, whatever, that is always where we see the most engagement, interactions with posts and with messaging online. So it resonates not only with my family personally, of course, right? It resonates with our entire workforce and the communities that they're working in, what's happening and what the future looks like. So it's an exciting area to be in, to be honest.
Thanks, Danny. Morten?
Yes. I mean, just look at these machines, right? I mean, they're amazing. The largest machine that we put out now in Vestas, these are not Vestas turbines, by the way, it's too bad, but the largest machine we have in our portfolio now is 15 megawatt. One of those machines can power 20,000 households, just one machine. It's just, enormous, the amount of power you can get out of nature. And you can transform that today into, green fuels. You can basically decarbonize all of energy as we know it today with existing technologies. And I just want to take you back a little bit, because when I started in the wind business some 16 years ago, I started as a lobbyist, just full disclosure here. The coal and fossil fuel guys were laughing us out of the rooms, right? They never thought we would become anything in the world of energy. As maybe a small niche, a loud niche somewhere, but generally we were too expensive in their opinion. We were unreliable. We were a nuisance to them and their existing business models of cooking the planet. And I've sort of made myself the mission to show them wrong, prove them wrong. And I can say after 16 years of doing this that they're not laughing so much anymore. They are more expensive than we are. They are the ones begging for subsidies these days, not me. We have beaten them on all parameters. And the next level is going to be complete dominance of this energy system with clean, renewable power. And they all know it. So they are holding on to their dirty business model for as long as they can. But they will not win, because we have already proven that we are capable of producing 100% clean, reliable power with existing technologies today. And so I'm going to keep fighting, because we are only just started. And the true revolution of renewables is starting right now, because you have policymakers here in the US who are enacting something like the IRA, and that will transform US energy systems and prove to the world that you can run the world's largest economy on clean fuels. So that's the next for me, and that's why I'm in the game.
Okay. And that's a lot to get behind. And I'd imagine that there's a high level of allyship in the room on many of the remarks that you just made. And I think that we're in the right place. It's exactly the right time to be pushing in that same direction. Simone, wrapping it up with you on this question of your personal motivations. I know that you recently took a new job within McDonald's, but what's really that next? What does it look like next for you? What's motivating you?
Yeah, thank you. Well, I think if I think about where I've been in my career, and it's always been focused around partnerships and collaboration on any subject. I mean, not any subject, anything around environmental and social impact, probably. I've had a strong sense of responsibility, leaving the world a better place than I found it, things like that. And I think that comes from, I think my focus on environment right now and my passion for it, and where I'm really excited to kind of dig in and do more in the spaces. Maybe a little bit less big and visionary taking over than you, Morten, but more of these quiet moments in nature, just simple as that. I'm from Chicago, I live in the Midwest, spending time on the lake, on the beach, or in the woods, and just something like that in those precious moments, that's really, for me, is something I come back to, of like, why this is my issue, this is the thing I have to do. And then, just to add that, seeing the news and all the continued weather and floods and fires and everything coming at us, and it's overwhelming. And I think we just have to use that as fuel to keep going. And I had my first child last year, and so it is more real now than ever before that we have to do this work, and we have to take on these big fights and save the places that we love.
Thanks, Simone. So with the minutes we have remaining, just one final question, and that is the main takeaway for everybody who was generous enough to spend their time with us today. What's that one thing that when folks walk out of the room today, certainly I would like to think we are all equally as accessible to any of you in the audience today to continue this conversation when we're not here in this space, in this room. And I'll get started with what I would like to see at least one takeaway be collectively for all of you. And that's to remember that individuals, you all have agency, you all have superpowers that you may not be aware of, but really tapping into what those are. And in the energy space, while it can appear to be complex, or there could be barriers or hurdles for accessibility, as the previous panel correctly pointed out, there are numerous ways in which individuals, the organizations you're affiliated with, or your extended value chains or business network can engage on the topic of decarbonization and really amplifying your efforts and accessing resources that you may not be aware of or that simply weren't available 1 year ago. So I'd like to have your takeaway be the accessibility and the progress that you as individuals in this room have the power, the superpowers to deploy within your networks and within your organizations. But I'll open it up to my other panelists of one main takeaway from your perspective for this room before we wrap up.
I think we have one together now. We already have one on our to-do list, right?
Okay.
So I think that's a good takeaway. Okay. The takeaway is really that nothing comes by itself, right? You know, everything is a little bit of a struggle, especially in the energy space. You know, it's such large infrastructure and you know, many entrenched interests. So getting, you know, progress here is a constant battle. And I think, you know, every time we are, you know, in a setting where we discuss, you know, oh, it'd be great to do this and that, then that's, you know, let's go do it. It's the only way forward. You know, we have to create some in ourselves, you know, the ability to just do action when we get good ideas.
Okay. Thanks, Morten.
I would say ask questions, you know, question the norms. So whether you're doing that individually, you start there, with other people, and say, is this the way that we have to do this? How do we do it differently? And just be bold in that. I think there's all the ideas are out there that we need, and so just always question what's in front of you and find a better way if it's needed.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And echoing both of you, you know, take action, drive stuff today. It's good to be bold and push the envelope and do pilots of these things, but there's a lot of solutions out there that are what I call double green. They're economically green and they're environmentally green. And you can make this happen now. Electricity, energy is one of the areas where most of us can make a move pretty quickly and see some results. So, yep.
And we need to move fast.
And we need to move fast.
Okay. I fourth that comment. Please join me in adding a round of applause to our great panelists today.
Well done.
And we'll hand the stage over.